This is the electron transport chain. This is the third big step in aerobic cellular respiration. Pretty much, we're coming right from the Krebs cycle or from the citric acid cycle, which is more popularly called. You have a bunch of NADH, and NADH, like we'll use an analogy, it's like a dump truck. In the back of the dump truck, there's two things being carried. You have a hydrogen proton, and you have electrons. It's very convenient that NADH carries those because that's exactly what you need in the electron transport chain. So what happens is you have this dump truck that's carrying electrons and hydrogens. That's like the very beginning. And that dump truck, it becomes hydrogen protons and electrons. And what happens is you have a bunch of proteins in this inner membrane. Now, just to give you some perspective, we're in the matrix of a mitochondria. And what happens, this is the inner membrane, and there's these proteins that are in this inner membrane. And what these proteins do is they use active transport, which is a type of transport across the membrane, and they take these hydrogen ions and they suck them through using the energy from the NADH, the electrons, and they create what's called like a higher concentration gradient, which means you can see all of these blue hydrogen ions up top. That pretty much creates like a force where all these hydrogen ions naturally they just want to flow back into the this matrix of the mitochondria. So what happens is you have all of these proteins kind of doing that. Each one of them, it's through redox reactions where you are your redox is gain, so you're gaining electrons, and so eventually you have. At the end of the process, you have a lot of hydrogen ions up top. I'm going to rotate over here. You have all these hydrogen ions, and you have a really high concentration gradient. Now, like I said before, naturally they just want to come back through. And, of course, you have this awesome molecule. It's called ATP synthase. Now, you probably learned about facilitated diffusion before. It's a type of diffusion across the membrane where you don't have to use any energy. Now, ATP synthase is really cool because what happens is, like I said, these hydrogen ions want to come back through. They use this protein to enter back into the matrix. So all these hydrogen ions, they come through. They use the ATP synthase. I kind of think of ATP synthase as it's kind of like you're at a water plant, and like it's kind of like a spinning generator. And when these hydrogen ions shoot through this channel protein, this thing spins, and it creates ATP. And that's kind of like the whole end goal of the electron transport is to create ATP. So at the beginning you have NADH, which is our dump trucks, and at the end you have hydrogen ions coming through the channel protein to create ATP. Now, how much does it create? It creates 32 ATP per one glucose molecule. So all the way in the beginning of glycolysis, where we split glycolysis and then, where we split glucose, and where the glucose molecule became pyruvate for the Krebs cycle, and we use all of the pyruvate to make NADH. Well, here we have the NADH becoming ATP at the very end, and it produces 32.
Don't forget the electrons at the end of the electron transport goes into oxygen.
Oh, yeah, and as a final acceptor, oxygen takes electrons, and it expels water.
I'm teasing.